In this video, I want to explain the results of my research into which league filtering method works best for Betaminic. So in Betaminic, we can backtest a lot of football strategies based on 13 seasons of data. And if we find patterns that worked in the past, we can follow them and hope they work in the future. One of the question marks we have is when we are creating strategies, which leagues should we include and which leagues should we filter out? What method of league filtering has the highest chance of leading to profit and success in the future? So what I did for this is I tested 8 different ways of filtering leagues, and I put all those statistics into an Excel file and compared which methods worked best. And I did that by splitting the data into 2 sections. One time period is the RP, the research period of data, and this is the data I used to initially filter the leagues. And then I had a second set of data, which I call the test period, and I apply the leagues that I chose from the research period data to the test period data to see what results they would have got. To explain that in a different way, I used the final 3 full seasons as test data and the first 10 seasons as research period data. I would select only these 10 seasons of data, and then just using that data, I would then, for example, with the buy yields of 1% or more method, I would rank by yield, and then I would only include strategies with 1% or higher yields in them. So for example, I'm just using 10 seasons of data, and I'm imagining this is the only data I have. I then rank the strategies by yield and only include the leagues with 1% or more. Once I've selected all the leagues with a yield of 1% or more, I click Save Leagues and I get the data for that. And I see it tells me we have a drawdown of -28, a yield of 15%, average profit per month of 4.72 points. And I take that data and I save that in my Excel file under the yields of 1% or more section, and that becomes my research period data. And then next I imagine, okay, if I had based my strategy upon this, my league filtering on this, I'm going to follow all the leagues that have 1% or more yield. If I then actually bet for the next 3 seasons with that, would I have made the same level of profit or not? And would I have similar drawdowns as this data predicted? And what we often see with this backtested data is we do see profit, but we just see a shadow of that profit. We don't see 15% yield, we see 3% yield. We don't see 4.5 points of profit per month, we see 1.6 points of profit. We still see profit, but it's not at the same levels. And we see the leagues that we chose. Yes, some of them are made profit, but some of them are also making a loss. And we've missed out on some leagues that did make profit. So does that mean our league filtering method didn't work? Is just following leagues that have a yield of 1% or more not the right way? Well, the way I try to analyze that is to compare the results of 29 different strategies, all of them tested with 8 different league filtering methods, and then seeing what results, if followed through over the next 3 seasons, would they have got, and to find out which method made the most profit. And the results of that were very interesting. So these results here are ranked by the test period profit. So which method made the most profit in the test period. So this table here is the aggregated, the combined profit of all 29 strategies. So this OL means the original leagues of the original strategy. So the test period, the 3 seasons, the test period data of all 29 strategies added together of the original leagues, of the original league selection of the original strategies, is the clear winner. And the thing is, well, that's okay. We can say, okay, use the original leagues works best, but that doesn't help us when we're creating our own new strategies or when we're updating strategies, because we don't know how they chose those original leagues. And also a lot of these top strategies we're following them because they've done well over the past few years. So it really introduces a bias into the results. So we can't just say, oh, follow the original leagues, because we want to know which method of filtering works and which method should we be using. So actually, after that, the next best method that made the most profit was something called an MDDE method. And that's a method where we add strategies based on their effect on the maximum drawdown. And this made the most profit out of all the methods. But the very simple yields of 1% method came closely behind it. I'll explain what MDD is in a little bit more detail in a moment, but I'll just go through the results here for now. So clearly the MDDE method worked very well, and also just using all the leagues that have a yield of 1% or more also did quite well. But one major difference between those two, as we can see, is the drawdown. So the MDDE method managed to reduce drawdowns compared to just using all leagues with positive yields of 1% or more. It's nice to see that the yielding one also managed to keep a yield of 4% or more, had a healthy number of bets. And then next, as we go down here, we see that following all leagues does the worst. But I have to say here that of the 29 strategies I followed, only 19 of them actually make profit in the all league stage. So 10 of them don't make profit in the all league stage. So it's a little bit unfair to judge it like this. But we can see that despite that, actually in the research period, these 29 strategies made a profit of 17 points per month. But that turned into a loss of minus 23 points per month. And negative exclusion also did really badly, with a very large loss and big drawdowns. And if you're familiar with what the negative exclusion method is, negative exclusion is when we start with all leagues and we only remove the leagues that have yields under 5% and have more than 100 bets in their data set. That means we're only removing leagues that have enough bets to prove they don't work, which means we could still be using a lot of losing leagues just because they have less than 100 bets in their data set. The reason for this is we don't want to accidentally remove leagues that do work for this trend just because they're making a loss with a small amount of data. We want enough data to really prove they don't work. And I actually thought that method was going to work. I thought that might turn out to be the winner, but it turned out to be one of the worst. So that's the method I've actually been using to filter my leagues for quite a while now, and here it's really proved wrong. So trying to use as many leagues as possible because you're not sure to exclude them or not is wrong. That's not a good method because you're going to include a lot of leagues where it doesn't work. But interestingly, if we are more selective, so if we're only choosing leagues because they've got high yields, and again, this positive inclusion, this is another one that's cherry picking just the good ones. Positive inclusion means we start with no leagues and we only add in leagues that are making profit and have yields of over 5% and have 100 bets worth of data to prove that. So we're thinking we're only including leagues that have proof that they work. And this often ends up with many fewer bets. You can see here the bet number is only 274 bets per month, but this does quite badly too. It still makes profit, interestingly, but a real shadow of the monthly profit we're expecting. So if monthly profit, monthly profit was 31 points per month in the research period, but in the test period it's just 1 point. So a real shadow of the trend we thought we'd found. And just choosing yields of 5% and 10%. So here we're choosing fewer and fewer leagues, fewer and fewer bets per month. We're just focusing on the leagues that made profit and with a high yield in the research period, and these also do badly. Their average profit per month of 80 and 67 really drops down to 6 and 5. So the trend that's discovered here, while it does continue, it does make profit, it's much lower than what was indicated in that research period. So what we really want is we want to find something where the average points per month carries over the most, where the trend we find in the research period carries over the strongest or has the highest percentage chance of carrying over. and that turns out to be this MDDE method and even the yields of 1% method. What that means is that we're including as many leagues as possible that are making profit, and we're not including any loss-making leagues, and we're not just cherry-picking the top ones. We are actually choosing quite a few leagues. And next, let's look at what the difference is between this MDDE method and this Y1% method is. So what this maximum drawdown effect method is that we add leagues by profit up to a maximum drawdown of -20. And then as we add leagues one by one, if adding a league pushes us over that -20 drawdown, then we don't include it. So what we're trying to do there is to only include leagues that seem to really fit the trend and are not showing a lot of volatility in that research period. The idea being that we're going to have a set that has a low drawdown. So for example, if I was doing that with Contend UD, I would start by isolating 10 seasons worth of data, order them by profit and loss. You can order them by clicking at the top of the column, excluding all the leagues, and just start with the top league, save that there, and we see it's got a maximum drawdown of 11 there. And then I would just add them one by one and see what it does. Okay, we're at 10, that's fine. And I would start adding leagues, and as long as adding these leagues doesn't push me over 20, I will keep adding them. So as we're at Slovakia now, we have a drawdown of -16. I add the next country, Northern Ireland, and that pushes us suddenly, it increases the drawdown by -10. So maybe that means Northern Ireland, while this trend does work for it, it's quite volatile. So I'm not going to include Northern Ireland there, and I'll include the next one. I'll try Slovenia. Can we add that one? Yes, Slovenia, that's fine. It doesn't massively increase our drawdown. I have the next one, we're fine. And then I keep adding them in that way, one by one. So you see, I add them one by one, but if when I add one, it goes over my target drawdown, which in this case is -20, then I skip it and I don't include it and I move on. And I will do that for all leagues down to those that have at least 1 point of profit or more. And I'll stop there, that's my bottom level. In theory, you could choose your own. I have just arbitrarily chosen that 1 point bottom limit there, and I've arbitrarily chosen -20 as the maximum drawdown I want to have. That's what I chose for this research period. And the initial idea behind this is by choosing leagues that end up with a drawdown of around -20, let's find those Contend UD results down here. So here's my Contend UD results. So you can see my MDD level here. So in the end, with my MDD, I managed to get a maximum drawdown of -19 points. And including those leagues, we had average picks of 22 picks per month, average profit of 4 points per month, and a yield of 18%. And then when I applied those leagues to the test data, so as if we'd actually bet on that, the average profit per month went from 4 points to 0.89. So there we got about just under 25%, maybe about 23% of the research period profit. That doesn't mean this doesn't work. I'm saying that what we're getting here is a pattern of what percentage of that researched profit can we hope for? What will be average? And we see that the maximum drawdown of -19 has ended up being -56. And that was very interesting too. That showed me that while this method was intended to reduce drawdown, it doesn't really seem to have done that. But compared to the other methods, it has actually reduced drawdown. We can see here that the positive inclusion method on this occasion has done quite well, just -26 there. But overall, that wasn't repeated. If we look at the overall results, we see that the MDD method, with an average maximum drawdown from the 29 strategies of -25, that ended up being 4 times as much as 95, but that was the smallest drawdown of all of these 8 methods, well, of these 7 methods. As I said, we can't really use the original leagues as a method for researching our own strategies because there are no original leagues when we're creating our own strategy. So out of all these methods, maximum drawdown effect method did actually reduce the maximum drawdown as much as possible. and it managed to keep the highest level of yield, and it managed to make the most amount of profit, which is why I think this is the winner of what's the best way to research your strategies. If you can't be bothered to use that method, then you could just go for the simpler 1% yields method, but you're going to see an increase in the maximum drawdown there if you do that. So this is the significant result of my review, which is that when we have all these public strategies, a lot of these were created quite a while ago. Like some of these were created in 2018, and that was back in the time when there were only 55 leagues in the database of Betaminic. And at some point, surely we need to update these strategies with the latest data. And when we do update those strategies, how should we filter leagues to take advantage of this database that is constantly being updated? And so now I can say with quite a lot of confidence, it's with this MDDE method. So with this method, we can say we have the highest probability of success by following this method. But then let's use this even more. And now I want to know, well, based on this data, how can we predict our maximum drawdown of our actual betting system when we go live? And how can we predict how much profit we might make? So I want to look for correlations with the data so that we can predict our drawdown and predict our profits. That's the next step. Before I move on to that, I just want to explain another thing I researched, which was from the 29 strategies that I researched with the maximum drawdown effect method. I took a look at what their estimated losing sequence was, and I compared that to their eventual drawdown. So I was very happy to see that most of these strategies had ELS multipliers under 4, and the worst of them was up to 7.29 or 5.2. And those of you who know I use Whitaker Staking, which is all about trying to survive a multiple of the estimated losing sequences. And up to now I've been trying to survive an estimated losing sequence of 4. And you can see that would have done well for all of these strategies except 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. And just recently I've switched to an ELS of 10, and that would have easily survived all of these. Most of the strategies have really low ELS multiples, under 3, but there are a few that go over and above. So the conservative staking settings that I recommend now are an ELS of 10, and that works fine for all of these strategies. And that's even with the research period maximum drawdown being really, really low, like under 20, but all of them end up being much, much higher. So while those maximum drawdowns are still lower than other methods, they still increase. So the research period data does not really indicate the maximum drawdown we're going to get. So I wanted to, my first target was trying to find a pattern. How can I predict my live betting maximum drawdown? What can I expect? One other thing I wanted to check was that, does it increase our chances of success if the strategy filters make profit with all leagues as opposed to only making profit with some of them? What I mean by that is, if we don't filter out any of the 111 leagues, does it still make profit in the research period? And if it does that increase our chances of profit when we actually do start betting on it? So 20 of the 29 strategies make profit with all leagues in the research period data. And when we run a similar analysis on them, we see here that the all leagues method beats negative exclusion this time. Still makes a loss, but a smaller loss than the negative exclusion strategies did. Even with this method, we still see the MDD method coming out on top with the most profit. And we see that the yields have increased slightly. So what I can say here is that, so if your strategy makes profit in the all leagues data, then that does slightly improve results. There's a higher chance of success there. But what we also see here is that these strategies that use the most data, that include losing leagues, the all leagues and the negative exclusion method, these methods, they include losing leagues, because the concept is that, well, maybe we shouldn't exclude all leagues, maybe the trend is still valid there, but they lose really badly. So here I can say very strongly, very confidently, when we update strategies with the latest data, we should definitely exclude the loss-making leagues. So I can very confidently say that's one thing I've learned from this research: only include profit-making leagues. preferably 1% yield or more, but if you can do it, then add them by their effect on the maximum drawdown. And if we're just looking at the strategies that made profit with all leagues in their research period, but then we also apply the MDDE method to them and follow those for the next 3 seasons, we see similar ELS multiples, all of them under 10, just one of them of around 7, most of them under 4. We see most of the strategies make profit, but still 4 of them make a loss. So just because something worked historically doesn't definitely mean it will work. And that's over the next 3 seasons. And we can see, even though, again, they had low drawdowns, they still had higher drawdowns, but not completely to the extent we saw before. So I think we can say that if a strategy works on all leagues in the research period data, then it gives you a higher chance of success when you actually come to follow those and place real money bets on them. And to just spell that out, so 80%, 16 of the 20 strategies that made profit using all leagues in the research period continued to make profit in the test period with the MDDE filtering, but only 77%, 7 of 9 strategies which made losses using all leagues in the research period data made profit in the test period with the MDDE filtering. So what it means there, if you restrict yourself to only using strategies that do make profit using all leagues in the research period, you slightly increase your chances of making profit when you actually start following them with real money. Here it's just a 3% difference. If we look at the effect it has with the 1% yield filtering method, 70% or 14 of the 20 strategies which made profit using all leagues in the research period continued to make profit in the test period, but only 55%, 5 of the 9 strategies which made losses using the all leagues in the research period data made profit in the test period. So there's a significant increase in the chances of success there when using the simple 1% filtering. And when we're just using all leagues filtering, 55% of those strategies that made profit using the all leagues in the research period continue to make profit, but only 33% of strategies that made losses went on to make profit. So I think we can say, we can say making losses using all leagues in the research period does not strongly indicate it will continue to make losses, but there is a slight advantage to having a strategy make profit over all leagues. And also overall, 76% of strategies that made profit using the MDDE method in the research period data continue to make profit, but only 62% of strategies continue to make profit using the 1% filtering, and only 45% of strategies that made profit using all leagues continue to make profit. So there's a strong indication that the MDDE method increases the chance of profitable outcomes. So far my strong conclusions are filter leagues by the MDDE method or even the 1% yield method. Always exclude loss-making leagues, and if you want to improve chances of success slightly, then choose strategies that make profit over all leagues can help. So in my next bit of research, I wanted to work out if there was any correlation between the 1% yielding leagues results and the MDDE results. So this is the test period data of both of these, and I compared them across, and I found that in general the maximum drawdown in the test period for the 1% yielding leagues and for the MDD leagues overall were very similar, of a ±10 range of drawdowns. And profit levels were also overall similar. Overall, we did see lower drawdowns for the MDDE method, so that still wins. And we did see some higher profit levels for the MDDE method as well. There were a few outliers at the top and bottom, and these came where the MDDE method had excluded quite a few more leagues than were in the 1% yielding group. So obviously by excluding those leagues that seemed to be more volatile with the trend, it has massively improved the drawdowns, except for one. There was one that worked in the opposite way, where the 1% yielding leagues had a -53 drawdown, but the MDD had a -95. but overall it's just a plus minus 10 difference there. So I would say that the MDDE method is still better than the 1% yielding method. It has better drawdowns and has a slightly better profit result as well. If we remove the outliers, then we see that the results are overall quite similar actually, but we don't want to just prepare for positive thinking. We want to prepare for all situations, including the big winners and losers. So what I found here was that the MDDE maximum drawdown was similar to the 1% yielding league's drawdown, but slightly better. So how can we predict that drawdown of what size it's going to be? So what I did next is I thought, is there something in the All Leagues research period data? Is there any correlation there? So I took the data of the maximum drawdowns from the research period when using All Leagues, and I compared that to the test period maximum drawdown of the MDDE method that I want to use. And what I found that there was a range where the maximum drawdown from the method I want to use, the MDDE method, was generally either equal to or less than the All Leagues research period maximum drawdown, with just a few of them, the highest level being 1.35. And for me, what this means is that now I've got something I can really hold on to when I'm predicting my maximum drawdown, is that even though I'm going to follow and bet on selections from leagues selected by the MDDE method, I'm going to base my expected drawdown on the All Leagues drawdown. So whatever the All Leagues drawdown is, I'm going to imagine that in the worst case scenario, it's going to be about 1.35 times that level. And this gives me a maximum drawdown level I can predict. So in the worst case, it's going to be 1.35 higher, but in most cases, it's going to be less than whatever the maximum drawdown was from the All Leagues level. So I think now I have a way to predict the maximum possible drawdown of the strategy I'm going to follow. I think that's a significant move forward. So I can predict my maximum drawdown, I can plan on that worst case scenario. Next, I want to know how much profit can I expect. Oh, and just before I do that, again, I compared the All Leagues research period estimated losing sequence to the drawdown we got with MDDE strategies in their test period. So basically saying what Whitaker staking settings would work fine, and all of these are under 7, which is really great to see. Most of them are under 4, just a few of them are higher than 4. So I think my new super conservative setting of an ELS of 10 will have no problems at all. We're definitely being very conservative there, I think, trying to create our unbreakable bank. But yeah, next I want to know, how can we predict what kind of profits we might get? So when we research our strategies and we see this plus 3.46 points average per month, how much can we believe that, and what can we really expect? So what I did here was to compare the profit predicted in the RP data, in the research period data, to the profit we actually got with the test period data. And the results I got were there's a 76% chance of profit with the MDDE method, but the profit levels never matched the research period data. They never reached 100%. They were always a shadow of that research period data. And this is really important to understand. So when we see that number here, this is from our historical data where, you know, to some extent we are backfitting, we are overfitting, we're just picking the winners. So of course this is going to be higher than usual, but we've found a trend. That's what we're seeing. We've found something that's beaten the bookmaker's margin of -4%. And when we follow that, we will be able to get a shadow of that. And the question is, well, what percentage can we hope for? And so here we can see there's a fairly good chance of getting these levels. Sorry, what does this graph mean? So if in our research period it says we can get plus 3.46 points per month, then there's a 14% chance of getting up to 9% of that value. There's a 17% chance of getting up to 20% of that value, 7% chance of getting between 20 to 29% of the value, 10% chance of getting 30 to 39%, a 10% chance of getting 40 to 49%, a 7% chance of getting 59% of this value. So yeah, there's still a chance of getting near that level, but just like a 3% chance of getting 90% of that. But if we add up these, but if we look at this core area here, 10, 20, 30, there's a 36% chance that we can get 30% or more of the number we see here. And then there's probably about 40% chance that we're going to see a third or less of this value here. And that's what this illustrates here. And this graph shows what percentage of this number can we hope for in our actual real results. So I think some people get worried their system's not working when they're not achieving these numbers. But so I think what our research finds, we find a highlighted version of the trend, but we're only going to see a part of that because we've picked out the winning league. So obviously we're going to get better results than expected. But I think now we can get a realistic expectation of what percentage of this number can we expect. And the average was 20% of the research period level. So the average was getting 20% of this number. So including all of these results, including the losing ones as well, the average we end up with is 20%. So if we're following many different strategies, a multi-strategy system, so including our losers and our winners, what we can plan for getting 20% of this number. As I say here, we can hope for 50% and plan for 20%. So if we see a strategy saying it gets plus 3.46 points per month, we can hope for 1.73, but we should plan for 0.70. And when we make that plan for 0.70, we should also imagine that our maximum drawdown is going to be up to 1.35 of the All Leagues maximum drawdown. And that gives us a lot of stuff we can plan on. I had a look at the profit for the other methods, like the yields method, and that also overall we did see a continuation of profit, but again, never 100%, but a shadow of that. So again, we're seeing this kind of chance of profit, getting a percentage of that monthly figure. And if we look at the All Leagues profit data, it's really different. There's a real extreme here. You're either going to get over the expected amount or under the expected amount. It's basically whatever number you see, you're either going to get a lot more or a lot less. So I think you following All Leagues is very inconsistent. That's possibly the most volatile. So again, we can say don't follow any losing leagues when you're making these strategies. And I think I said it again here. Yeah. So again, we should not include any losing leagues. These leagues clearly do not work for the strategy filters, and only focus on profitable leagues, preferably selected by the MDDE method or even the 1% yield method. If we just look at leagues that made profit in the All Leagues section, it does slightly improve things, but it's still quite inconsistent. So I don't think we'll be following All Leagues systems anymore. So my conclusion here is this. Filter leagues by the MDDE method, always exclude loss-making leagues, and for planning your banks, calculate the estimated maximum drawdown as a maximum 150% of the All Leagues MDD. So even though we're going to use the MDDE method for league selection, always look at the unfiltered leagues, all the leagues together, and whatever that maximum drawdown is, that times 1.5, you could use that as your absolute worst case scenario, super conservative maximum possible drawdown, 150%. It's more likely to be, the average is 50%. So the average maximum drawdown is 50% of the All Leagues maximum drawdown, but the worst case scenario was 135%, and the best case scenario was 8%. So depending on your risk level or how efficient you want to be with the bank, you could even imagine your maximum drawdown is going to be just 50% of the All Leagues maximum drawdown. But if you want to be super end of the world, this is the last bank I'm ever going to use, trying to make an unbreakable bank, then use a maximum drawdown expectation of 150% of your All Leagues maximum drawdown. Or if you're that's if you're making a bank based on level stakes. If you're using Whitaker staking, then just use an ELS times 10. So we've seen above that the maximum ELS we had to get through was 6.3. So 10 is quite conservative, and your bank should be able to make it through. In terms of profit levels, aim for 50% of the MDDE research period levels, but plan for 20%. So when you're planning to cover costs, planning for how much money, the low levels of what you might expect to make, then plan for 20%, but hope for 50% if things go well, if there's a positive run. The range was actually minus 50% to plus 90%, so some were near plus 90%, but overall the average came out as 20%, but I think we can still be positive and try and hope for 50%. And each strategy has a 75% chance of making profit out of these 29 strategies I looked at. So that means following more strategies can smooth things out, because if you have more strategies, then it's more likely that most of them will make profit. So follow as many as you can. But when you're making your strategies or updating strategies, then filter leagues by this MDDE method, exclude the profit-making leagues, and I think that will improve results a lot. And based on this, I've gone and updated my strategies. I've gone through all of them. I've gone through the strategies I know that I've been interested in, and where I can, I've made MDDE versions and I've shared them, so you can just follow them as they are. But some of the strategies can't be shared. Like if they don't meet the sharing requirements, such as they have to have 11 picks or more per month, or they need to have yields of 5% more or more per month. If they don't meet the Betaminic sharing rules, then I couldn't share them, so you'll have to make them yourselves. So how do you make it yourself? So as I showed you there before, you just take the original strategy. You go to the original strategy, make sure you get the name, just copy the name, duplicate it, add MDDE at the start and then put its name. And then when you're in the strategy, go to the leagues, and then in the leagues, order them by profit and loss by clicking on the profit and loss column, and then deselect all the leagues, and then start to add them one by one, watching the maximum drawdown here, and add them up to a level of minus 20. And that is the MDD method. You do have to manually do all this stuff. It'll take a little bit of time, but it's well worth it because it will increase your chances of success. And actually, a guy who helped with this method, he actually has written a script that does this automatically. He's done it with a add-on that goes into your browser. I think it works for different browsers. I'm using it for Chrome. It's something that's made with an add-on, an extension called Tamper Monkey. And if you add a Tamper Monkey extension for your browser like Chrome, then you can add in a script to this Tamper Monkey extension. And what this extension does, that's written by this guy, is that you can set the maximum drawdown you want, like I want 20, and I want a minimum profit and loss of 1, and you can just press play and it will automatically do it for you. This thing it'll try one, it'll check what the drawdown is, and then it'll move on to the next league and it'll just do it automatically for you. And then you can go away and do something else whilst it's doing it, because when I do it one by myself, it takes me about 20 minutes sometimes to go through, because as you get more data, it slows down a bit, the website. So it's great to walk away from the computer, have a break, and let it just do itself automatically, and it just does it for you. When it's running, you do need to leave the browser as it is, so you can't go to other screens, you can't go into another browser screen, you need to have it as the active main window, so you can't do other stuff on the computer whilst it's doing that. So you see here it's excluded the National League. Obviously that's put it over the minus 20. So it's great, it just does it for me, it's brilliant. So I can have a coffee or I can just have a little mental break, and it will do it for me. If you want this script, I can't give it away for free, but it is in my shop. now. You can buy it through me, and I will pass the money on to the guy, and it's here for £40. If you buy this, it downloads the script, and then you need to install Tamper Monkey extension yourself into your browser, and then the script that you can buy here, you can paste that in, and then you'll have this that can do it for you. If you have lots of different strategies and you're going to be doing this, every couple of months, then it could be a good investment. This generally works quite well. Sometimes it does get stuck and I need to refresh my window and try again, but overall it saves me a lot of my time and effort, because I can just let it do it itself. Because it's this refreshing bit that as you get more and more leagues selected and you get more and more data, it sometimes takes longer to refresh, and so if you can just let it go automatically, it's much better. And when it's finished, a little message will come up at the top saying finished. So this is an option if you also want a bit of help with how to do this. Of course, you can do it manually. You can just click on the next one, click on the next one, keep going through them, and manually make sure it doesn't go over the level you want. But there is this cool little script that one of the people in our group has made for me. Yeah, he's willing to sell it to anyone else if they want to use it. But as I say, where I can, I have made the MDDE version that I'm using, and I've shared it. And where I couldn't share it, then you'll just have to make it yourself. And I've ended up using 16 strategies. So I've cut out some strategies that have like really high drawdowns in their All Leagues period. I've included this data in each of the strategies. So when I see these really big drawdowns, they kind of scare me off. So 94, that's okay. 97, that's okay. But minus 511, so I'm going to drop those strategies, because like that was one I followed for a long time, but I'm a bit scared off by these high drawdowns that I've now found. So I've ended up with just 16 strategies, which they're listed on my website. So on my website, if you go to the Betaminic page, they're listed there, or in the actual article, they're listed in the article as well. I've got them down the bottom here, I've listed them there at the bottom, and I've written their results, what their All Leagues drawdown was, if you want to have a look at them. And I've included some basic details here so you can see what the All Leagues drawdown was. So basically what we're seeing here is, this is what I think the maximum drawdown is going to be of this. It's going to be probably this or less. The average is, the drawdown is going to be 50% of this level is the average expected drawdown. And in the worst case, it's this times 1.35. And I've been super conservative, and I've got my estimated drawdown as 150% of this level. So it probably isn't going to get to this level, but that's what I'm mentally preparing for, and I've kind of drawn the line at about 200 there. I'm not going to include strategies that have a possible drawdown above that. And based on that drawdown, that expected drawdown, I've made some stakes. So if you're doing level stakes, if the expected drawdown is about minus 50, then 2-point stakes. If the expected drawdown is about minus 96, then 1-point stakes. If the expected drawdown is minus 200, then 0.5-point stakes. That's if you're doing level stakes. And all of these have ELS ratio of under 10. So you can use Whitaker Staking with an ELS of 10, and it should also work for them. And that's how I've made my staking plan for this. And how much profit can we expect? Well, I've taken the average profit from the MDDE results from the research period. I've taken that, and I've taken 20% of that value, and that's what I'm aiming for. So even though it says we might get 42 points, I'm expecting 8.48 points. So I'm being quite conservative about this. I'm planning for 20. I'm hoping for 50%, but I'm planning for 20%. So if we're planning on that 20% level, we're still hoping for about 8 points of profit per month. And if you're using the level stakes figures here, then that's aiming for 8.22%. If you're using Whitaker staking, I would expect it to be a little bit more than this. But I don't know what that result is yet, because I've got to do more research on that. some back testing and staking analysis to see what Whitaker staking can do for these results. But generally, Whitaker staking improves on level stakes. But even on level stakes, I think we have a very realistic number now. So like 42 points per month is unrealistic, but 8% is realistic. 8 points per month is quite a realistic target, I think. So I think this all sounds like more sensible numbers now. We've got some sensible expected drawdowns. We've got a sensible profit target, some sensible staking plans for level stakes, and Whitaker staking with an ELS of 10. So then what kind of results can we expect from different banks? So in the past I've said my target is to make £1,000 a month. If I want to make £1,000 a month from this, then I'd need a £12,000 bank. That's quite large, so I think I'll have to build up to that, I think. If you start with a £2,000 bank, you can hope for 8 points profit a month, so that's £164, which would cover the Betaminic subscription of £82. The BFBM manager is another £10, and if you're on a VPS, that's a little bit more on there. So absolute minimum levels, I think, is a £2,000 bank, really, but probably a healthier amount might be £5,000. But this is all based on this really conservative 20% of profit level. I mean, hopefully we'll get a bit more of that. I mean, I'm trying to be really negative conservative in this plan here to avoid disappointment, but hoping to get more than that, conservative level. So I think my ultimate target is probably to try and work my way up to a £10,000 bank and aim for £800 a month or something, or £1,000 a month. But I think at the early stages, maybe a little bit lower, like £5,000. I'll see what I can get. I might even, and these are really conservative numbers, to be honest. I'm being super negative here. I'm taking the All Leagues maximum drawdown and timesing it by 150%, when the average is 50%. So I'm being so negative here. So actually, I think what I might do is, I will go for a 10,000 bank, a nominal 10,000 bank, but probably only have 5,000 ready to commit to it. I know I'm being really conservative here on these drawdown expectations, so I could push my luck a little bit, I think. But if you're trying to be super conservative, then stick to these numbers, and hopefully you won't be surprised with the results. Hopefully these results will be what we get. Yeah, at the end of my article, I've got a summary again of the 16 strategies, and if I plug them into the aggregator on Betaminic, we see 248 picks per month. The figures we look at here is about 250 bets per month, and we can hope for 50% of this profit, and maybe and plan on 20%. And I think that's quite a meaningful advance. Then I've made a bot set for this. I've made various bot sets with different banks, again on my website. At the bottom of the article, you can choose which one you want to download and edit. And if you want the bot set, in the news and updates section, I've got how to set up the new bots, how to set up the new set, how to edit the stakes, how to create the strategies. So I hope this research was useful for you. It took me a long time. So many different sheets. It drove me crazy. All this lovely data. Oh, data. And packed it all in. And I ranked them all in. And all of that data led to this lovely conclusion here, which is MDD is the best. That gets the most profit, the most chance of success. Don't follow all leagues. Don't do negative exclusion. They definitely don't work. 100% go for one of these two methods, but probably MDDE works best. So here's my final conclusion again. So my conclusion is betting strategies based on backtesting with historical data does work if we avoid overfitting and data mining, which is an error I've still been doing, but hopefully this research is going to help me move another step forward on that. And have a staking plan to get through the natural variance and volatility of winning strategies. So even if those strategies are going to win, it doesn't help if we've lost our bank halfway through the year or even in the first month. Filter leagues by the MDD method. Always exclude loss-making leagues. Planning your unit bank to be super conservative. Estimate your maximum drawdown as a maximum 150% of the All Leagues MDD. But the average is 50%, so I'm being super conservative there. And the range is 8% to 135%. or you can use Whitaker Staking ELSx10, which has survived in all cases so far. And you can aim for a profit level of 50% of the research levels, but plan for 20%. And again, the range is minus 50% to 90%. And there's a 75% chance of each strategy making profit. So there we are. That's the results of my research. I hope it's useful for you when you're using the Betaminic database, and maybe we can get back to profitable ways now. Thank you for watching. Interested in big data betting? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. And check out Betaminic's big data betting research database that has historical odds and football statistics. If you're looking for betting system recommendations, then come to my website bettingsystemsguide.com, where you can get both manual and automated betting bot systems. You can read more about betting systems in my books, find verified winning tipsters at tippingsports.com, and automate your betting with the BF Bot Manager software. Visit my website for more information. Thanks for watching.